If you look at the map of Russia, one thing is very prominent, and that is its large size. This is the largest country in the world, which is spread over 11 times owns into continents. From the Arctic covered with snow in the north to the deserts of Kazakhstan, and from the Baltic Sea in the west to the Pacific Ocean in the east. Start if you like a map animated videos related to focus on geography. It is so big that it is spread over the world map. But the most interesting thing is that 80% of Russia's population lives in only 20% of the area, and the rest of the country is almost empty. But why is this? Why does such a powerful country have such empty land? And why is it easy for some part of Russia to live, and why is the rest so difficult? To understand this, we will have to understand Russia's geography, history and politics. Because there are many untold stories behind this strange population pattern of Russia. Let's start with the basics. Divide Russia into two parts. In European Russia and Asian Russia, you will see a very strange thing. European Russia is spread over only 23% of the area, but 80% of Russia's population lives here, while Asian Russia, which is also called Siberia or Far East Russia, is spread over 75% of the area, and it is mostly empty. Russia's capital Moscow is also in European Russia, and St. Petersburg is also Russia's cultural hub. Most of Russia's railroad network, industries and political institutions are also on this western side. But why didn't the Russians settle on the eastern side? To understand this, we will have to go back centuries. In the beginning, Russia was not as big as it is today. At that time, there were small Slavic communities in this area, which are now called West Russia and Ukraine. These communities were near the rivers, and the land was fertile here, and the weather was also very good. But on the other side of the Ural mountain range, the conditions were very different. When the Russian Empire began to expand, it tried to settle people on the eastern side. But it was very difficult to live there, because Siberia is famous for its extreme cold weather. There is only snow here. Now, as the rivers around Europe had become cities easily, it was difficult to do this in Siberia, because it was very cold here and there was nothing to grow. But then things started to change during the Soviet Union. When the Soviet Union came to power in the early 20th century, its leaders planned to spread development and population to the eastern side, especially in Siberia and Far East Russia. But this time, instead of asking people's will, the government forced them to send them there. From the 1920s to the 1950s, hundreds of thousands of people were sent to the eastern side under the rule of Joseph Stalin. Some of them were political prisoners who were accused of speaking against the government. And some were simple citizens who were sent there for labor. And some people were sent by making gulags, which were prison camps in a very cold area. Life was very tough in these camps. People were forced to work on mines, jungles and construction projects in extreme cold weather. And a little food and shelter was given. Meanwhile, the Soviet Union began to build new cities and industrial centers on the eastern side. And these centers were close to oil fields, coal mines and military bases. Its purpose was that the resources of Siberia could be used for the Soviet economy. And there, the Soviet Union's control would be strengthened. The biggest project of this era was the Trans-Siberian Railway Network, which was completed in 1916. And this track was laid from Moscow to the port city of Vladivostok in the west, which is right next to the Pacific Ocean. This is the longest railway line in the world, which is more than 9,000 kilometers long. And its purpose is to connect the eastern areas of Russia with the western areas. This was a great success at that time. And this also helped to open the Siberian areas to some extent. But despite this, most Russians did not want to settle there. Despite the new cities and railways, only a few people were ready to live in those areas. And its biggest and natural reason was that Russia's western part is very good to live in. European Russia has always been suitable to live in. The weather here is pleasant, the land is fertile and flat, which makes construction easy here. In this European part of Russia, especially in the Black Earth Belt region, the land is the most fertile in the world. This fertile land has spread to areas such as Kursk, Voronezh and Belgorod. And it is considered excellent for wheat, barley and sunflower crops. And that's why 70% of Russia's grain is produced in this Black Earth region. Similarly, the big rivers here, such as the Volga, which is Europe's longest river, and the Dnieper, both have historically been used for trade. The Volga is connected to more than 11 Russian cities, including Kazan and Izhne Novgorod, and Volgograd. and it finally falls into the Caspian Sea and thus helps a lot in agriculture and transport. This area is also close to Europe, which gives it access to the trade, culture, and modern infrastructure there. Russia's two most important cities, Moscow and St. Petersburg, are both on the western side, and about 2 billion people live in both of them. These cities have good roads, healthcare systems, job opportunities, and high-quality education. Most of Russia's big businessmen and government offices are also here, which is why all of Russia's professionals and students come here. Even during the Soviet Union, the western side was preferred here. The Russian elite, which included government officers and intellectuals, lived here in Moscow and St. Petersburg. All of the Soviet Union's investments went to these cities, and this pattern is still there today. As today, Moscow's average salary is twice that of Russia's national average salary. This is why today you will see a clear divide in Russia. The western area is the economic and political center, while Siberia and the Far East are far behind it. And the reason for this is that it is very difficult to live on the eastern side. Siberia is known for its harsh weather. For example, if you look at Yakutsk, which is the coldest city in the world, the temperature there goes below -60 degrees Celsius. The rivers remain frozen and the summers are very short. And even in those, mosquitoes make life hell. There are very few cities here, and there is a lot of distance between them. There are forests, mountains, and frozen land here. There is no road or infrastructure, and there is no special agriculture here. But despite this emptiness, Siberia is rich in natural resources. Russia has the largest oil and gas reserves in this region. Because of this, it is considered one of the most resource-rich areas in the world. According to official estimates, 80% of Russia's natural gas and 70% of oil comes from Siberia. In fact, a large part of the gas available in Europe comes from Siberia. Similarly, there is another natural wonder in Siberia, and that is Lake Baikal. This is not an ordinary lake, but it is the deepest lake in the world. Its depth is up to 1,600 meters. And what is even more interesting is that 20% of the world's fresh water supply is here. Similarly, 40% of Russia's coal reserves are also in Siberia. And in addition to this, there are also large gold and diamond mines here. For example, Sukhoi Log gold deposit in Irkutsk is one of the biggest untapped gold reserves on Earth, where 450 tons of gold is present. This area is also rich in uranium reserves. And this is what makes Russia the 5th largest uranium-producing country in the world. But here a big problem is that it is very expensive to extract these resources from the ground. Now, like the Arctic area, it is very cold here, and the snow is so much that it is difficult to reach the ground. And then there are no roads here, because of which it is also very difficult to get drilling equipment here. That's why extracting oil from here is more expensive and difficult work than extracting oil from countries like the Middle East or America. Because of such tough conditions, the people who live in Siberia are mostly those who have jobs in the oil, gas or mining industry. Life is very difficult here, because the cities are very far away here. And then there is a jungle in the middle. There is snow and the weather is also very cold. That's why when the job is over, people leave this area. And that's why you will see a lot of ghost towns in Siberia. The Russian government has tried a lot to solve this problem. They also tried to give people free land, low taxes and even greed for money, so that they go to the eastern side. But most people refuse. And the reason is simple. It is very cold here. The cities are very far away, and basic necessities such as school, hospital and even internet are also difficult to get. Life is just too difficult here. Another reason for this strange population pattern is that Russia has limited access to the hot seas. And this has always been a big problem for its economy, trade and military. Most of Russia's coastline either remains frozen all year or is far from the global shipping route. There is the Arctic Ocean in the north of Russia, but this sea remains frozen for 9 months a year, because of which it is almost impossible to trade here. Although some Arctic sea lanes have opened due to climate change, but still, it is dangerous and expensive to pass through ships here. The eastern part of Russia touches the Pacific Ocean, and there is also an important port city like Vladivostok. But the real problem is distance. Vladivostok is 9,000 kilometers from Moscow and is on the other side of Siberia. Now Vladivostok is a warm water port, but in the winters, the water often freezes here too, and then it can only be passed through icebreaker ships. That's why this port is important. But Russia doesn't rely on it much. Russia has the best sea access in the Black Sea through the Svitopol, but there is also a problem here. To reach the Mediterranean Sea, Russian ships have to pass through the Bosphorus and the Dardanelles Straits, and both these straits are under the control of Turkey, which is an NATO country. In the event of a war with NATO, Turkey can block these choke points, which will end its access to the Atlantic Ocean and global trade routes. Due to this warm water access, most of Russia's population, infrastructure, and industry are in these areas. But this emptiness of Russia is also its biggest weapon. Apparently, Eastern Russia seems to be a weakness, because there is so little population here. But this empty land gives Russia a great military advantage. This huge empty land becomes a buffer zone for Russia. Because if an enemy tries to attack from the eastern side, then he will have to pass through forests, rivers and mountains spread over hundreds of kilometers. And then he can go somewhere and reach the big cities of Russia. In this way, Russia gets time to plan the response to any attack well. And this is not just a theory. This has happened in history. During World War II, Germany attacked the Soviet Union from the western side. As the German army progressed, the Soviet army deliberately retreated and went so deep that the German army's supply line began to be affected. On top of that, it was very cold here, so the German soldiers got tired. In this case, the Soviet soldiers gathered and attacked from all sides and pushed Germany back. The same strategy can still be used today, because Russia's geography is very dangerous for any army coming from outside. Similarly, during the Cold War, most of the Soviet Union's military bases and radar stations were here in Siberia. These bases were deliberately built here so that it would be difficult to trace their location. And not only this, in this Siberia, bomber jets and nuclear weapons were also hidden so that no one could reach here. So although Eastern Russia looks empty, but this emptiness gives room for Russia to breathe. It gives time for defense and also gives room to hide its most powerful weapons. So why do 80% Russians live in only 20% areas? It's because nature made the West more livable and the East more challenging. But this empty space is not only a problem, but also Russia's hidden strength, because it not only protects Russia, but also gives it the resources due to which it becomes a world superpower. Today, technology and transport have improved. A flight from Moscow to Vladivostok takes only 8 hours. Internet connections are widespread throughout the country, but still, the basics of daily life don't change. Cities are close to each other in European Russia. Trains are fast, shops are full, and schools, hospitals, roads, everything is better. In Eastern Russia, there are facilities in big cities like Novosibirsk, Yekaterinburg. But as soon as you go a little further east, the situation gets worse. Many young people come from the eastern side to study or get a job. Then they never go back. The birth rate on this eastern side is also low and the elderly are more. Because of which, where the population of the western side is increasing, the eastern side is getting more empty. Despite the fact that this area is full of resources. After all, Russia is a giant. But it is such a giant that is standing on one leg. All its power and development is on the western side, while the future of the eastern side is uncertain.
See you in the next video with another interesting topic. Take care of yourself. Allah Hafiz.